What's the worst cheating story you've ever heard? Story 1. Couple was together for 8 years, both working at sea on the same ship for 8 11-week trips, bought the house and heading towards marriage, kids, etc., etc. Start a 11-week trip and noticed something wasn't right. Girl had fucked another crew member on the trip off and wanted to be with them. Guy had to watch the start of the new relationship while on a floating prison, and due to his qualifications couldn't leave the ship source. Me. I am that guy. Story 2. My bio mom's best friend was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. We moved her husband, and her daughter in. My mom slept with her husband and got pregnant, so they put her in a nursing home to die all alone, just so they wouldn't have to deal with the consequences. She was hours away as well, so her daughter, who was 10 at the time, was unable to visit her. She died alone because she went to her best friend for help. I don't speak to bio mom anymore. After her friend's death, she showed off her brand new car with the life insurance money. She married her husband. At the time, her dead best friend also had a 19-year-old daughter who was homeless with a toddler. I felt so fucking sick sitting in the car, listening to her brag about how nice it was and how she finally got the car she deserved. Some people are disgusting. Edit to add more backstop that just makes this story absolutely vile. My bio mom is a counselor, and the way she even met this best friend of hers was through the daughter who was 19 with a toddler. They met when said daughter was 13. My bio mom was her caseworker for mental health support. She crossed a huge professional boundary doing this. On top of that, she came into this girl's life to help her and ended up hurting her so fucking badly. Her mom, who passed, wasn't the only victim here. My bio mom was also married. There's other children involved, etc. So many people were hurt by this, it's truly sickening. TBH, during my bio mom's pregnancy, her mom actually also got stage 4 lung cancer. She died within 7 weeks and never met bio mom's baby. I kind of feel like it was her fault in a sense. I truly believe karma can and will get you through loved ones. Story 3. I was an IT contractor for the Department of Defense, NMCI for those curious. We got a keyword alert on an email conversation, then more. Same folks involved. So we went and checked out the email and the email thread. Turns out it was a senior chief who was talking to nearly a half-dozen women under his chain of command that he was having affairs with, multiples of which were pregnant with his children. He, of course, was married, having 4 kids with his wife. What started out with a, "Hey, you're not supposed to discuss that on regular email," investigation turned into a massive scandal, wrecking multiple marriages and turned into a whole lot of meetings with his very angry CEO. Don't do stupid on company email. And really don't do stupid on DoD servers. Story 4. One of my wife's cousins died of cancer after a 30-year marriage. When her husband was clearing out her home office, he found a box with diaries, receipts, letters, hotel keys, etc., detailing the hundreds of times she cheated on him with random guys throughout their whole marriage, going so far as to take their daughters to meetups and gaslighting them about what was happening. Story 5. My friend was partying with her boyfriend and some other people. Her boyfriend fucked another girl on the same couch as her while she was passed out. She woke up part of the way through it and just didn't know what to do. Story 6. Not me, but my best friend. He was madly in love with a woman and wanted to marry her. They lived together and were very happy. As a birthday gift, she bought him a plane ticket so he could fly out to see me. While he was with me, he would talk to her every so often. Every time he got off the phone with her, he would tell me something just wasn't right. His spidey sense was tingling. He came home to find evidence that she had someone over at their place. She initially denied it, but eventually she admitted to having a male coworker in the house. Her buying the ticket was just a way for her to have the place to herself for a 3-day romp. My buddy was devastated and heartbroken. It took him years to recover. Edit. This was many years ago. My buddy is doing just fine and is in a happy, healthy relationship. The woman in the story, not so much. She bottomed out in life. Drugs and alcohol eventually took over. Last I heard, she was quasi-homeless and had to shack up with a much older, controlling man just so she could have a place to sleep. Everyone got what they deserved in the end. Story 7. Couple sitting across from me at a bar in Key West. She was his best friend's former wife. They started hooking up and best friend found out the affair. Came home after church once and blew his head off. Once the dust was settled, she married her dead husband's best friend who she had been fucking causing the suicide. They were both insanely happy and even partially laughed when telling me the story. Alcohol makes people just spill everything. Story 8. Former colleague of mine in his mid-30s was living with his long-term girlfriend and they had been shopping for engagement rings. He comes to work one day and early afternoon receives a text from her telling him she's seeing someone else, has packed up the house and moved out to live with the other guy. No apology, no further explanation. She then immediately blocked him and left him to deal with the rent and other bills on his own. He was a nice guy. It was horrendous to see that happen to him. He's now happily married, to someone else, of course. Story 9. I ran into my ex-wife's mother at a bar with some guy like 10 years after we separated. Said hi and disappeared quickly. 6 months later, she is in the local paper. Apparently, the guy she was with was her paralyzed husband's brother that she was fucking. She hung herself in jail after being arrested for trying to hire a hitman, cop, to kill her husband. I was so relieved to have gotten away from that craziness and surprised my ex didn't as her to make it a 2-for-1 special with me thrown into boot. Story 10. My cousin told me this while he was in boot camp. There was a guy who had a GF wife and a girl who had a husband. One day, the boy and girl decided to cheat on their SO. The day before graduating from boot camp, a sergeant who was a family and didn't approve of people who cheated on their SO saw them kissing, and he had them call their SO to tell them that they wouldn't be graduating from boot camp and needed to start from day 1 of boot camp because they chose to cheat on their SO. Story 11. My friend had a massive heart attack and having was hard for him for a while. He worked, and his wife didn't. He fell asleep in the chair one morning while getting ready for work. He awoke to a man unlocking his door. For about a year while he was at work, his wife had different men with keys to the house coming over to have with her. Story 12. My friend's husband hired a prostitute for $40 when my friend was a few weeks postpartum with their baby. He invited the prostitute over to their house while taking care of their baby and had in their bed. My friend found out later because he was missing from the school where they both worked, and she found out he had been arrested or detained or something. I forget exactly. Because he had gone to the police to report that he was being blackmailed. The prostitute had started blackmailing him, and he went to a loan shark to get $1,000 to pay her off, and when she demanded more money, I guess he decided he couldn't keep paying and tried to report her to the cops and tried to lie about his involvement. The cops obviously were suspicious and found out he had hired her. He was fired from his job at the school and it crushed my friend. To add insult to injury, her mother-in-law blamed her saying that she hadn't slept with her husband during some of the pregnancy. It was causing her a lot of pain at the end of her pregnancy and she physically couldn't. She's still with him. I hate his guts so much and it makes me so furious that she's still with that gaping. Story 13. Not so much cheating, but this guy I personally knew when I was running around in the streets had a harem of about 5 women, all older, all with their own homes, either cheating on their husbands with him or divorced. That's not the worst part, though. He admitted to me that he would purposely seek out oldish, lonely women, get them hooked on meth, like he was, specifically so he'd have these women rely on him for their drugs, and he'd have a bed to fall into every night, could ask them for money whenever he needed it. He was willfully and knowingly getting these middle-upper-class women with no real experience with drugs or the street life, addicted to meth little by little so he could use them for his personal gain. That was his hustle. That was his job. It's literally what he devoted his life to doing. When he first told me, it blew my mind that I was talking to a bona fide psychopath. I'd like to say that I cut all contact with him after that, but at the time, he was my dealer, so I didn't. Dude would tell me stories of how he had these chicks wrapped around his finger, how he just got $500 from this one chick because he fed her some story about his rent, and tomorrow he was getting $400 from the next one because he fed her the same story, and the night after that he had to go sleep with number 3 because her husband wouldn't be there. He juggled them like it was a business because to him, it was. Crazy as. Story 14. I know someone who regularly cheated on their out-of-town girlfriend. I guess he was going to cut all that out when she finished her advanced degree program out of state. She moved to his state and they got an apartment together. While in the shower, his phone is buzzing with messages. She finds the girl's username sending all these messages and decides to send her a direct message from her own account, and the other girl was completely honest with her. I know who you are, I hook up with you all the time, including last weekend at your new apartment in your bed, etc., etc. Story 15. My brother's girlfriend cheated on him with his best friend, and when he found them doing it in his bed, my brother beat his friend to death. Now my brother is in prison for life. Story 16. My mom told me this story about one of my dad's old colleagues. She was an acquaintance of the wife. They'd been married for years, older couple. He cheated on her with an 18-year-old. In a fit of rage, she bought a new car, new clothes, and threw a few enormous parties. When the anger passed, she became severely depressed and hung herself. He found her in the entrance of their house. They had kids too, but I think they were in their early 20s by then. Story 17. When I was a police officer, a coworker found his wife in bed with another police officer from the same district. Wife would tell the lover about husband's week schedule, and lover would have his changed in order to have with the wife while husband was working. Problem was, one day husband got dismissed 3 hours early and went back home without texting his wife first. He had some suspects, but could never imagine about another police officer. No shots were fired that day, luckily. Story 18. I was working in IT, needed to perform manual backups of sales laptops. Long story short, I found dozens of pics and videos of two coworkers getting it on in a company-provided hotel room. They left nothing to the imagination. The guy also saved screenshots of texts between him and his wife. She had found out about the affair and was in the process of divorcing him. It was really messy, kids involved and all that. I sat him down and told him I found that shouldn't be on company property. He turned white as a ghost. But I told him I'd keep it between us, which I did. Data was deleted, and that was it about it. Edit. Oh yeah, my best friend, Shosh, best man at my wedding, slept with my married sister on my wedding night too. That's a story about cheating I'll never forget. Turns out a full open bar at the reception wasn't the best idea. Story 19. Ex-partner let me raise her kid for 4 years while cheating on me with his father the whole time. Let me propose, to which she said yes. Then one night after me paying up his month of private nursery fees and putting him to bed, I came through to her telling me to leave, or she'd call the police and tell them I had broken into the house and never to contact them again. They've bought a house together now and are seemingly doing well, while I still haven't fully recovered and don't know my own self-worth. That's a shortened version of events. Story 20. I worked in a factory. We will call them Ben and Sarah. Ben was the supervisor of maintenance and Sarah worked setup, sort of a maintenance person specialized for that specific production line. Ben's wife was diagnosed with terminal cancer. When this happened, Ben started cheating on his wife with Sarah. He had quite a bit of money and promised Sarah that after his wife passed, they'd move away to a beautiful cabin in British Columbia in the mountains. I caught them boning in the maintenance office one midnight shift. I didn't report it because I was a dumb 21-year-old. Long story short, Ben promised Sarah the world after his wife passed. Welp, his wife ended up beating this terminal diagnosis and he broke it off with Sarah. This literally drove Sarah insane and she was forced to check into a mental hospital. I never saw her again after that. Story 21. Ex-boss fucked his wife's niece in the bushes on a hike. Her husband caught them and they all got divorced. He ended up marrying his ex-wife's niece a few years later. His now ex-wife and his new current wife are all best of friends again. Weird. Story 22. There was a malpractice case report on the medicine subreddit. There was a guy whose wife tells him she wants a divorce. He leaves and says he's going to shoot himself in the head. She calls the cops, and they find him alive. They take him to the ER, and the ER doc assesses him and determines he is not a risk to himself or others. He is discharged from the ER, goes home and attends couples counseling with his wife. 18 days after being discharged from the ER, he committed suicide. Almost immediately after the suicide, the widow starts openly dating another man. She wants to file a malpractice lawsuit against the doctor who assessed him, but it turns out that the doctor died 4 days before the guy committed suicide. So she ends up suing his widow, as the representative of his estate, and she didn't want to go through a trial, so she settled for a few $1,000,000. Then it comes out that the woman was already in a relationship with the new man before she even brought up the divorce. So to recap, a woman cheats on her husband, leads him to suicide, and sues his doctor's grieving widow. Story 23. An ex was at a party with her then-boyfriend, but she wanted to have with another guy. So she gave her boyfriend 2 really strong diazepam pills, telling him they were ecstasy. This was 90s Scotland, so people were given to gobbling pills like Smarties without asking too many questions. When he passed out, she went upstairs and did the do with the other guy. Story 24 years back, in my early 20s. There was one guy who was in my extended friend group. Didn't know him that well. But he was a friend of a friend of a friend, and we would occasionally find ourselves in the same social gatherings. He had just started dating this girl. She was maybe a few years younger than us, probably about 18, 19. They were at the very start of their relationship, so I don't know if they were exclusive to each other. But people knew they were dating. A bunch of them went out on a night out. I didn't go out, but I heard about what happened later on. This friend of mine got extremely drunk. The girl he was seeing helped him back to his house. His dad was still up and heard them trying to get into the door. This was the first time the girl had met his dad. The dad helped friend to his room and then invited the girl in for a chat and to get to know her a bit. The girl ended up fucking the dad that night. Story 25. Had a coworker, married, start having an affair with a customer, also married, at our work, including sneaking out to make out with her in the parking lot on his breaks, and texting her non-stop while he was supposed to be working. The whole store knew about it. He would tell us gross details about their life, including showing us the deep scratches on his back, or the time he had to take her to the ER because they failed butt stuff and he ripper her. We all knew they were both married. Finally, they both decided that they were going to break if off with their spouses. He broke up with his wife. She, on the other hand, decided to work things out with her husband. So he went from 2 ladies to no ladies. This was years ago, and I do not think he's been in another serious relationship since. And on behalf of all women, I'm glad. Story 26. A friend of mine's wife brought a lover into their house without even asking him, and he was so smitten with her that he never argued and would only complain to me about it. Eventually fucked him up so much they divorced, and he's never had a relationship since because of trust issues. Story 27. My friend and I have a month-long game of Monopoly when we were kids. The board was stored untouched at his house. Little did I know he'd be secretly taking small amounts of my cash and putting it back into the bank, so I wasn't as liquid as I should have been. He ended up winning the game and didn't tell me for years. Story 28. The day my brother was born, my father was in the hospital with my mom for the delivery, told her he wished she wasn't the mom, and then went and spent the night at his girlfriend's house, while I, 5 years old, stayed with my grandparents. He was a long-haul trucker and was back on the road immediately after, so my mom brought my brother home from the hospital alone, had 5-year-old me to take care of, and a dog as well. And it was a C-section birth. No idea how she did it. Anyway, my brother and I are both well-adjusted adults. I do get pretty sad when thinking about my childhood, and I've never cheated on a partner, and I'm a good father to a wonderful 2-year-old with another baby on the way. I have a bunch of other terrible cheating stories from my childhood if anyone is interested. Story 29. The one posted a few days ago where the husband worked long hours and was on an unusually long business trip, busting his off. He came back home accomplished as he got the promotion of his life, and he and his wife would never worry about paycheck-to-paycheck living again. Instead, he found her cheating with a man who understood her religious beliefs. She came to Reddit trying to get sympathy from the masses. In my head, I imagine that man as happy as a dog when its humans arrive home. Can't contain his joy and can't wait to show his wife that he went above and beyond for his family. He contributed, and it was worthwhile. That moment he saw her, he shut down hard, walked away and didn't speak to her for 10 straight days. My heart breaks for that. Story 30. My first relationship with a girl was a long-distance relationship. I decided to surprise her by showing up. Don't do this, BTW, make sure they know. Caught her fucking her own boyfriend. Turns out she was cheating on him with me. I didn't take this well. Story 31. My friend told me he wrote some test answers on his hand. That was it. No interesting details, no backstory, no rising action or plot twists. Worst story I've ever heard. Story 32. My mate was 16 when he fell in love with a girl who turned out he knew when they were toddlers. She got pregnant. He gave up a training course to work as a builder for instant money. He was so happy, so excited for the future. She went on holiday, cheated on him repeatedly, and when he found out, she blamed him for her behavior. They split up. She put posters around where he lived with a picture of him, accusing him of all sorts. He completely humiliated him. He tried to take his life. He survived, but ended up in a hostel at the age of 17, surrounded by drug addicts and pedophiles recently released from prison. The poor guy ended up a heroin addict and never recovered. We lost contact, and the last time I saw him was shortly before my wedding 18 years ago. He was clean but mentally wasn't the same. Story 33. My wife had an uncle who died. Before he died, his wife, who I will call Auntie Cocaine, was cheating on him with Dude 2. People knew it. When he died, Auntie Cocaine and Dude 2 stayed together for years. When Dude 2 died a few years ago, it was known that Auntie Cocaine was already banging Dude 3. She doesn't quite understand why her first husband's brother doesn't want her at family events anymore. Story 34. One day, I get a call from a friend who I would see every few months. He was pissed off crying and said he needed someone to have a beer with and talk to. I go meet him at a local bar and he's fucking losing it. He starts telling me the story that a few months ago he had a mate. He went to the military with fall on hard times and became homeless. To help him out, he paid for him to get a moving truck and move all his stuff down to his house and live with him for a while to get situated. He moves in, my buddy gets him a job somewhere, and he's doing great and doing much better for himself. Well, one night my buddy wakes up in the middle of the night and his wife is gone and he looks around the house and can't find his wife anywhere, and he notices his buddy is also gone. He goes out to his driveway and his truck windows are all covered in steam. He opens the door to see his wife's face bent over while his buddy is plowing her from behind. He said he ran in the house infuriated, my guess is to grab something, then ran back out and his buddy was gone, and his wife was still getting dressed in his truck. They end up getting divorced and he was single for several years doing his thing. I only really see this friend from social media now, but see that him and his ex-wife got remarried and had more kids together. I don't know how he accepted her back after that scene. Story 35. The wife of a friend of mine asked him to take up guitar lessons because she thought it was sexy. She was already having an affair with the guitar instructor and thought, because my friend was taking lessons, he wouldn't be concerned with the instructor in the house. They got divorced for other reasons, and it wasn't until after that she confessed to it. Story 36. My buddy divorced his wife of 10 years because they had problems with finances and she was overspending. For context, my buddy does not pay attention to things very well and is very oblivious. Anyways, they both remarried and her next husband was a bit more attentive and discovered she was essentially and by more attentive, I mean their first child was not the same skin color, and she confessed that all 4 of her children belonged to other men. DNA tests my buddy asked for confirmed that only their second child was actually his, so this also exposed that she was intentionally getting pregnant by other men, and my buddy lucked out. Story 37. This was a long time ago. Girl I was interested in told me she recently broke up with her but still lived with him. One night she told me he physically abused her. I brought some of our mutual friends over to her place to help her move out. The ex came home to see all of us standing there moving furniture. My friends and I are heated when we see him. We confronted him, roughed him up a bit, pushed him up against the fence. This guy didn't say a word, he looked like he's about to cry. It was just weird. We thought he'd fight back, but he didn't. We grab the rest of this girl's stuff and we leave. Girl and I ended up dating seriously. It's now years later and we've been living together for a while now. Things weren't going well in the relationship. We start arguing a lot. She starts instigating fights and leaves the home more. I get a random call one night from a guy who says, I need to stop abusing this girl. For the record, I have never put a hand on this girl or any girl ever. He shows up one night and we have a fist fight in front of my apartment. Turns out she's been feeding this guy lies about me being abusive and that they've been hooking up. This is the same thing she did to me when we first met. When I had a talk with her a week later, she admitted to making some of that stuff up when we first met. Story 38. When I was doing clinical shifts in the hospital, a lady got chlamydia from her cheating husband, though she said she hasn't had any vaginal or recently. We asked if she had penetration at all, and she looked at her stoma, hole in the stomach where the feces body waste is removed, and we all gagged. What a kink that is. Story 39. Happy relationship for about 18 months. She got pregnant. Baby comes, girl starts acting weird. He finds out she's been sleeping around the entire relationship. Gets a DNA test for the baby. They're related, but it's not his kid. It's his little brother. Girl had been fucking dear old dad for 2 years. Source, me. Dad's dead now. Good riddance. Story 40. I moved across country to marry a guy I met online. We have no issues and have been married for 16 years. I made a new friend and one of my old friends from my hometown called me when I was with my new friend. They flirted over my phone call and ended up looking distance dating. Now my friend from my hometown, Sally, was known to be a bit of a... She had done many things that I honestly shouldn't have remained friends with her over, including having with my boyfriend, who later came out as gay. Wild tangent, sorry. Needless to say, I should have been kind to my new friend, Kent, and explained better who she was and not to get involved. Anyways, Sally comes out and stays with him for a week. leaving her child with her mom so she can come out for a booty call. When she gets back, she admits to cheating on him because she has a high drive. He forgives her and says that it is tough to feel that way, and that in the future, if she is feeling that way, she should talk to him. She takes that as, call me if you want to cheat on me, so it will be okay. One night at 3 a.m., she calls and wakes him up to ask if she can have a foursome with this group of people from a bar. He said, sure, do what you want, because you aren't in a relationship anymore. Kent still hasn't recovered from that relationship, and it has been 13-ish years. Story 41. I had two good friends in college, and all three of our wives cheated on us. I was first in line. My best friend of 8 years and wife of 3, B.A., came home at 6 a.m. from another man's house. She started acting differently after meeting him and another couple at her new job. It was truly strange and unexpected. I got us into counseling, but this happened shortly thereafter. I asked her to pack her up, which she did without a word, and I drove her back to his place and said, she's your problem now. Next came my friend Q, who married his high school sweetheart. She came across as the squeaky clean girl from next door, who, in fact, played Alice in Wonderland as a character actor at Disneyland. A number of years into their marriage, she confessed to cheating on him with his best friend. This was on the eve of their anniversary, and they had tickets for a getaway to the Bahamas to celebrate. He told her he'd not be joining her, so she went alone. While she was gone, he had a paternity test done that indicated he was not their child's father. Their marriage ended, and she took their daughter with her. The last was my friend D, whose wife, O, cheated on him while she was out of town. I had happily remarried, going on 31 years now, and we were best friends with this couple. Although they never told us the situation, we suspected as much, as they stopped getting together with us. She completely changed her appearance from J. Crew barn jacket girl to A, and he looked as though he'd been through the ringer. Some months later, I got a call from my friend Q. He told me someone had seen O coming out of another guy's apartment early one morning and asked whether she was having an affair. I asked who it was who told him that, and with a lot of coercing, he finally admitted it was my ex-wife. The truth came out, and D and O split up. He remarried and now has children. Story 42. There's one on Boru. The wife survived cancer, dude supported her all the way, she makes it through, and they start checking off bucket list items. Her friend had convinced her to ask for a hall pass. Husband denies the pass, wife says she is going to do it anyways and he should be supportive. Hall pass was for a coworker that was leaving, but always attracted to her. Husband follows her to the going away party and watches as she leaves with the coworker. Husband packs his things and leaves. She threw away a supportive marriage for a one-night tryst, ended up blaming the friend for convincing her to go along with it, and ending the friendship in hopes of getting her husband back, which by the end of the story didn't happen. It shook me until I could give my wife a hug. Story 43. My boyfriend of 7 years cheated on me while I was home saying goodbye to my dying dog and visiting my mom in the hospital. I was also in the thick of an accelerated nursing school program, and it was finals week. My car had also just broken down in the drive-thru of a Whataburger that same weekend. The girl he cheated with? A very close friend who was getting married in a month, and she begged me to not tell her future fiancé. I told him. Story 44. A good friend of mine was a doctor who took over his father's private practice when he retired. His wife was a med student when they first started dating, 10 years younger than him. One of the most intelligent and beautiful person I ever met. When she graduated, they became associates, and under her management, the practice grew to 4 associates and 6 contracted doctors. Truly an amazing person, highly competent, born leader, funny, the list goes on. But my friend no longer felt like the center of attention, so he quit being a doctor to become an influencer. You can imagine how that went. When that failed, he went and started an affair with a 19-year-old nurse in training who worked for his wife. She learnt of the affair when the girl's mother knocked on her door. The man could have been happy, doing one of the most well-regarded jobs in the world while appreciating that his amazing wife was making everything around him better. But no, he had to make this dream of a life a nightmare because of his overinflated ego. Story 45. How about that angel of a woman, for everyone who knew her, who was slowly killing her husband having swapped his meds? The husband, my very good accountant and a hard-working man, was growing weaker every week until he stumbled on a mail by chance. She had failed to shut the computer down and put it to sleep instead. The mail popped up as soon as he wanted to use the machine. On it, she was planning his murder with the lover, telling how good she was at being stealthy. The irony. She got rejected by her family and her son, 17. But as far as I know, she got out lightly because her husband didn't actually die. It's my understanding the lover dropped her pretty soon after she got kicked out of the house. I don't trust people easily, and this story is one of the reasons. Edit. Added a couple data. Story 46. I know a woman who has been cheating on her high school sweetheart, who joined the Navy, basically since the jump. We all sort of assumed they had an agreement because she was very fixated on being not like other girls and having wildly inappropriate levels of friendship and intimacy with all his male friends. She found some trashy divorced guy 20 years her senior with a daughter 8 years younger than her at her office, and proceeded to carry on a year-long affair, including interstate travel, and finally had to come clean to her husband when it got too obvious with her lies about travel falling apart. They got divorced, and it turns out she had been fucking basically all his friends the whole time. She fucked one of his close friends at a group cabin trip where the friend was literally also having with another, single, mutual friend on the trip. She's a disgusting, selfish, terrible person. But there's at least some universe resetting itself with her, because she's now stuck herself in a relationship with that guy, who treats her badly while she intermittently cheats on him. She's setting herself up to be miserable for the rest of her life. What makes me ill is the husband still doesn't know all of these shitbag dudes who claim to be his friend, had so much energy about the divorce, are still socializing with him, have all been joyfully fucking his wife sometimes while he was literally asleep in another room. I'm not close enough to the situation to actually say anything, but it really is one of the most upsetting things I've ever known about, in terms of people being absolute monsters to those they purport to care for. Story 47. Supported my ex for almost our entire relationship, 17 years in total, married, almost 10, so she could go to college and get her master's. Throughout the time, I had always suspected because she would be gone longer than usual sometimes, or I just didn't know where she went. I was working a lot to cover everything. She gets her master's and her first job in years and starts immediately having an affair with a guy at work. Drained our accounts and left me with the kids, stating he showed her what a real life could be. This guy was also married and his wife worked with them as well. It did not end well for them.